everybody. My name is Lakshmi Rebecca, and I'm delighted to bring you this very exciting conversation on working smarter. Now, before I introduce the panelists to you, a couple of hygiene announcements. One is, wherever you're viewing this conversation, there is a Q&A box. So during the conversation, please use the Q&A box to send us your questions. We have a team here that's capturing all of those questions, and we'll be curating the questions, and I will be presenting the same to our panelists at the end of the first conversation. Number two, a few days from now, we will be sharing a complete recorded video of this live cast, so you should be able to refer back to it as well as share with your friends and colleagues. And with that, let's dive into working smarter. I have a very, very esteemed panel with me this afternoon. We have with us George Chaco, the Director, Global Account, Asia Pacific and Japan at Intel. Welcome to the show, George.
Thank you, Lakshmi.
We have with us Ashish Sikka from Lenovo, who's the Director, SMB AP India Sales Region. Hello, Ashish.
Hi, Lakshmi.
And we have Amit Bhatia, Senior Analyst, Customer Experience from Forrester.
Hi.
Hey, Amit. So, working smarter, right? A couple of things have been very, very important to small and medium business owners. One is retaining the right employees, and number two is improving productivity in the business, right? With limited resources, what these businesses need is to ensure that they have the right solutions and that they get the right benefits. Now, because it's becoming harder and harder to find the right talent, it's become even more important to ensure that when we do find the right people, that they stay and that they are more productive. So now the thing is, many small and medium business owners are so pushed in so many different directions that they haven't really taken a step back and thought about employee experience, right? Now, before we talk about how to improve the employee experience, I want us to just take a step back and establish, what do we mean when we say employee experience?
One of the big buzzwords of late has been employee experience. You look at the number of conferences out there and number of job postings, everything is pointing to the fact that employee experience is very, very hot as a buzzword, but it's often misunderstood. And I'm glad that we started with this question, because people often tend to think of employee experience as an HR thing, that HR looks after employee experience. And unfortunately, the misunderstanding there is that it's about the employee life cycle. You recruit employees, you onboard them, they go through your yearly appraisals, and at some point they exit. So that life cycle is always the focus when people think about the employee experience. But actually, research shows that employee experience is what happens with the employee every single day. So when all of us, we walk into the workplace, the experience that we have right from morning till we sort of log out of work and go home, that experience is the employee. So the daily experience is the employee experience.
So the definition's completely changed from what sort of we all know, we all think employee experience to be.
It's the daily experience, everything that happens through the day.
And another interesting thing, not all small and medium business owners may have a business that's big enough to even have a HR person or a HR team. Right. So, so as a business owner, you kind of have to think about the employee experience yourself first. Otherwise,
exactly.
And there might be things that you can do even without having like a dedicated HR person there.
Completely.
Right.
Completely.
So now, if I were to put myself in the shoes of a small and medium business owner, I've got 100 different priorities, right? 99 of them are to do with how am I delivering my service or product or solution on time. How am I going to collect on time, cash flows, revenues, profits, right? I've got bills to pay at the end of the month. I've got salaries to pay at the beginning of the month. So now in all of this, where does employee experience fit, right? That's, I think, why is employee experience even important to me today as a small and medium business owner? I think that is a very important, question, and therefore an answer to understand as well.
Absolutely. So, Lakshmi, the reality is that the nature of the workforce is changing. In the past, it used to be different. Now, millennials comprise 35% of the workforce today. And that figure is going to move to 75% by the year 2025. So the whole nature of the workforce is changing. When you look at just mobility. How many people are remotely working, not in the office? That's about 63%, right? Again, a very, very high figure. When you talk to SMBs and you ask them what is the biggest challenge they have, it's about retaining talent. The figure says that 1/3 of the employees in SMBs leave in the first 6 months of the job. And that's not because of any other reason but the fact that they don't find the environment to be conducive to their working style. So the SMBs are today struggling with the fact that they have to retain this talent because that's a necessary component of their competitive edge. As long as they retain that talent, they're competitive. So that's really, really critical to understand, the nature of the changing workforce and what are the challenges these SMBs are facing.
Got it. I think if 1/3 of the people that you've invested so much time in finding and onboarding and training leave in 6 months, that's a big loss. That's a lot of time and effort wasted. I want to go back to something you were, sharing, Amit. You were trying to define employee experience, and you said today it's about the experience in the day-to-day at work.
Exactly.
So can we just go into that a little bit more and define everything that influences that experience on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So, put yourself in the shoes of a typical employee who walks into a workplace. What are the different factors? What are the different dimensions that will influence that experience that he or she has every day? If you want to structure that logically, the first and the most obvious one is, what is the physical environment like? What's the workplace like? Is it comfortable? Is it noisy? Do you have like open plan for collaboration? Is it inspiring to come to work every day? And we've seen examples with big IT companies having really beautiful campuses. So that is that thing, right? The physical aspect of the working environment, which has a direct impact on the employee experience. The next is the people aspect. Right? Who do you work with? Right? What are your colleagues like? What's it like working with them? What's the culture like? How political is, for example, your team that you work in? What kind of stress does that lead you to, or how helpful are they by nature? So all of these human aspects come into your daily working experience. And last but not the least is the digital aspect. Now, if you think about it, we are all digital companies today. We're all technology companies because everything that we do is so heavily dependent on technology. You may be a lawyer, you may be a doctor, you may be like a small engineering firm, but you use technology to deliver.
Everything from your billing to accounting.
Absolutely, right? Everything involves technology. So that's a big touch point for everybody, irrespective of the kind of work we do. So that's the third part that really influences the employee experience, the whole technology aspect.
Got it. Interesting. So the 3 pillars, the physical,
the cultural, and the technology and digital.
Got it. Now, coming back again to my 100 priorities, 99 of them being about revenue and profit and the bills I have to pay. So we've kind of established why are we talking about employee experience? But how is employee experience connected to the customer experience in my business?
Sure. So see, any SMB with any kind of product and services, at the end of it, who is your customer facing or who is your partner facing or supplier facing part of the organization? That's your employees. They are the ones who interact with them on a day-to-day basis and sell your products and services or make sure that your customers are happy. So if the employees are not happy, there is no way they'll be able to keep customers happy. 60% of the customers leave an organization because of the fact that they feel that the employee whom they were interacting with was indifferent to the problems being faced by them. So as thus, if you don't keep your employee happy, he'll not keep the customer happy, and that has a direct correlation to the net promoter score. We have already established that people with high CX have higher profitability, higher growth. So which also means that to keep your CX high, now you have to keep your employee experience high, and that would in a way contribute to your profitability and growth.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, that's a really important point, because as you look at the employee engagement leading to customer experience, and that leading to higher profitability, higher market share, and greater loyalty from your customers.
Absolutely.
That is something that is that brings back the focus on why we need to do what we're discussing today, which is just improve the employee experience.
Right.
Because as the employee experience becomes better, the productivity becomes better, and that then is going to lead to the better revenues that we talked about.
Right. And you mentioned the word productivity, and I want to jump in there because productivity is such an important part of the employee experience. When you mentioned the word making employees happy, and typically if you talk to HR and say, hey, what are you doing to make employees happy? Typical things like, hey, let's throw in free pizza, let's put in a ping pong table, that's not going to work. Research shows it is actually being productive that makes employees most happy. Like, think back to the day that you felt really happy at the end of the day. Right? It's one of two reasons. Either you were promoted, right, that day, or you were able to actually, finish the work that you had planned for yourself.
You found your flow.
Right, you found your flow, absolutely. And that's what drives, being productive, being in the flow. That's what really makes employees happy and drives the employee experience.
Got it. So this is why it's important to talk about employee
absolutely.
experience today. And of course, you can stop spending so much on pizzas and spend more on technology, right? But I have a question for you, Amit.
Sure.
So what are the challenges today in today's workplace, where 30-35% of employees are millennials, to ensuring productivity?
So, you want to be more productive, but you think of the typical work day that we tend to have. There's so many different distractions, right? They come in different forms. One is co-workers. Apparently there's some research out there that says loud co-workers are like the biggest disruption in your day-to-day work. So that's one big thing.
Do you have loud co-workers?
I will not comment on camera, but
So you do have
but that's a problem, right? All of us have faced this. There is the whole technology aspect in terms of our personal technology that we bring to work. So there's a smartphone always lying at your desk, which is sort of vying for your attention. There is technology, at your workplace that's also, sort of a disruption. For example, think about email. We get up to 80 emails on average every single day. And if you spend even a minute on these emails, that's like almost 1.5 hours gone. So that's a problem. You have like umpteen number of meetings. And then there's a whole emotional aspect at the workplace as well. So if you're having a great day, then you're super excited, that's good. But if for any reason you're upset, that messes with your head that day, right? You can't go into the zone.
Your speed comes down.
Yeah, speed comes down. And apparently, there's up to 300 different tasks that you're switching context for every single day. So it's pretty crazy out there, right? So if you think about productivity, you have all these different factors hitting at it.
I did not realize that on an average day we have 300 different tasks. I don't think I realized that.
Yeah, you're switching context all the time, right? You get an email, you have meetings, something else comes up.
Yeah, and also I think, when you look at all the different notifications and ideas that come towards you, it's a lot. It really is a lot. So I don't think small and medium business owners are actually talking about this.
Yeah.
Right? Or talking about it enough, right? They probably are frustrated, thinking, hey, my team's not, I thought if I put 10 guys on this task, it'll move 20x faster, but that's not happening. Right. And in my head, I'm wondering, why haven't they solved this problem yet?
So I'll tell you why they haven't solved this problem. The reason they haven't solved this problem is because they don't think it's a problem. And we know this because, we went out and we did this survey. We spoke to a number of SMB organizations across APAC. And we asked them, what is the kind of employee experience do you think you're offering? And most of them said, we are offering a really good experience. On the flip side, when we went to the employees and we asked them, what is the kind of employee experience you think you're having? They were like, okay, right? So there's this big gap, right?
Yeah.
SMB employers are saying, we think we are doing a good job, this is not a problem. But there's a big perception gap there because clearly employees are saying otherwise. So that's that perception gap, up to 30% in some markets. That's a problem. That's why they aren't really attempting to solve this big problem.
You mentioned the third pillar earlier, right? which is the digital pillar.
Right,
And
the
it's one of
technology,
the
absolutely.
3 key ones, and something that we can directly kind of talk about and sort of
Absolutely.
zone in on now. Ashish, I have a question for you. Why do you believe that technology is integral to employee productivity?
So when we look at productive employees, right? Productive employees are happy with their environment, whether it's the cultural piece which Amit mentioned, the physical space, or the devices which they have. And when we have spoken to employees, 35% of them actually say that they are less productive because of the technology disruptions or the tech issues which they face. I'll give you a personal example. I was on vacation with one of my friends, and he had to send out an urgent email, but his organization didn't supported mobile emails and all that stuff, and he didn't have a laptop, so he had to spend like half a day of his vacation to go and figure out a cafe to send that.
Yeah,
So
I'm sure he
obviously-
was cursing somebody about that.
Absolutely. Obviously, he was cursing his boss. And, that's not a good situation to be in for any
Yeah.
organization for.
Yeah. So talking again from the perspective of a small and medium business owner, the idea of employee experience in my big, wide or small room is sitting somewhere in the corner is a little thing that's demanding my attention and I don't have bandwidth for it, right? So how do I justify investing in this? How do I, justify investing in technology to improve productivity?
So let's take a step back, right? Let's look at 10, 12 years back, where we were and where are we today. I'm pretty sure that all of us can agree to the fact that we are more productive than what we were 10, 12 years back, when we didn't have mobile phones, when we didn't have the broadband connectivity, when we didn't have emails which can be worked over on the way to your office in cabs or stuff like that. To the point that now, when we can do most of the work when we are mobile, when we are at home, and save time. And today, when we speak to employees, right, we have heard about this thing of 4-day week. So people want to do more in a limited amount of time. And at the end of the day, that should also be the organization's task to try and get more productivity out of them in a limited amount of time, because that's what actually all of us are trying to aim for, right? And that's where the technology piece steps in, and we have already seen that at work in last 10 to 12 years time. So there is no way to say that technology cannot help address this issue of productivity.
Got it.
This is really, really true. When you look at, if you really deep dive into the issues that are being faced by employees today, slower load times, just waiting for transfer speeds to pick up so that you can transfer files, and even outdated software. There's data to suggest that 545 hours are lost annually because of these technological challenges.
Wow.
And that's a huge number. Just think of it. You were talking about costs and how they add up. Just do a math. It's about 2.5 or even 3 months of a ghost worker that's working on your roles and not giving any productivity.
Yeah, and for a small and medium business owner, that's a lot.
Absolutely.
That's a lot. It's a huge cost.
Yeah, it's a make or break in some cases. And so the good thing is, and this is the only plug I have for Intel, is that when you look at even the PCs that Lenovo is bringing to the market, there's more and more new technology that you can get into these PCs that come to you, inbuilt, that will help you increase your productivity on all of these things. You take Optane memory, for example, just increases your load speeds for your applications by a factor. There's also Wi-Fi 6. Today, about 10 devices connect to Wi-Fi at home. That's going to drastically change with all kinds of IoT devices connecting. Think about 100 devices connecting. That's when you need Wi-Fi. The good news is you have Wi-Fi today. So there are these technological advances that you can get today as long as you have that perspective to go make those happen.
Got it. And I want to come back and ask some more about technology in a bit. But, before that, I want to understand the context a little bit. We mentioned a whole lot of problems around, challenges to do with employee experience and productivity. And Asia is a large market.
Right.
So many different countries and cultures and subcultures. Are we seeing any differences in the issues faced by SMBs, in this region?
So when we did the study, right, and we tried to figure out that what are the problems which the countries are facing or employees are facing, employers are facing, we could actually categorize the problem of technology into three big parts: portability, connectivity, and user experience. So these were the three major themes which we actually got from the employees. And when we tried to look at country-wise, obviously there are certain nuances which comes from country to country. So for example, in case of India, it was more about portability, it was more about viruses and malware. When we looked at countries like Vietnam and Taiwan, it was more about outdated systems and softwares. So there would be different nuances which will come in, but at the end of the day, everything is related to technology in this. So what we are advising SMBs whom we are in touch with is that why not look for technology service providers who can help them. And that way the SMBs can focus on the core business problems and somebody can help them solve the technology problems.
Got
I
it.
think, if I can jump in there, Ashish, you mentioned, getting the right technology providers. One thing that SMBs can also or should also do is, apart from this, you're thinking about employee experience, go to the employee, right? Ask the employee, listen to what they have to say. And again, speaking about Asia, we see that only 15% of the SMBs that we surveyed, they actually listen to the voice of the employee. Right?
Got
So
it.
that's pretty
Again,
scary.
it's that voice in the corner of the room that I'm going to
Yeah,
ignore until
yeah,
it's really
absolutely. And I
important
think
for me
it needs to
because,
become louder, and
Yeah.
you guys should pay more attention to it.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, in fact, I was just going to ask you exactly on this topic. What can small and medium business owners do, to ensure that their employees feel more productive? We talked about being in the flow earlier.
Absolutely. So, this goes back to the kind of workforce that we have today. You mentioned about millennials, and even if you think about the way we work today, we are on the move, we are remote, all kinds of flex working options exist today. Now, if you want to ensure that your workforce, big or small, is productive, one of the first sort of freedoms that you want to give them, enable them for, is the ability to move around. Right, so that they can work remotely. They can, while they're on the move, they're mobile, they can actually get work done. And that means further, 2 degrees of freedom that you need to give them or enable them for. One is access to information, right? How do you access information on the move? How do you access the, your technology, your files, all of those things? How do you do that on the move, right? So you want to do that for them. And the other is, how do you give them access to people on the move so that you can collaborate? Right? Where are we without collaboration? Right? We're all so tightly knit in terms of what we're trying to do. So collaboration becomes another big piece. So people on the move, access to information, and then access to people for collaboration. So all of these help productivity.
Yeah, and what you were saying just neatly really connects back to what Ashish was mentioning earlier about portability and connectivity. It's literally the same thing. We seem to be coming back to the same things.
Yeah, and how you do that is, for example, put your employees and give them access to the cloud. Right? That's how you increase the collaboration and the availability of these tools to be more democratic, so to say. And when you do that, you have to also remember that just getting them onto the cloud is not an end into itself, because that needs and that underlines the fact that you have to give them better performing devices.
Right.
Got it.
And on the point of the devices which George just mentioned, when we talk to SMBs themselves come back and say that they don't believe, 43% of them actually come back and say they don't believe they have the right IT team who can support their technological journey. And they also come back and say that in 57% of their devices get replaced before what they have established them to be. Why? Because the devices either broke, they are not of the right config, they are not of the right specification. And when your device is not working in today's technology era, obviously the employee is just sitting, not working, and that's lost man hours at the end of the day. So going back again to the point that at the end of the day, SMBs should be focusing on the core business issues and try and get outside help on the fact of technology which can help improve the productivity and employee experience.
Got it. So when we talk about employee experience today, we're not just talking about technology and mobility, we're talking about better performing machines or
Absolutely.
devices, right? Now I'm going to throw a scenario at you. So imagine that I am a small and medium business owner and I bought a machine that cost a bomb, right?
Right.
3-4 months works okay, and then kongs. Now I don't have the bandwidth, and I definitely, I'm going to be cursing whoever made that machine, and I'm definitely going to, be running pillar to post to see if it can work. But that's time and money lost for me, right?
Absolutely.
So what I kind of need is a solution that will work for me. So what's Lenovo doing about this? In terms of products and services, how are you building a solution that's relevant to me as a small and medium business owner?
Okay, so we broadly actually categorize ourselves into the 3 kind of things which we do for SMBs to help them in this entire journey. The first is, as you mentioned, on the product side, to have the right product for SMBs. See, at the end of the day, the needs of each of the businesses is very different. We spoke about the millennial population. A millennial population wants a product which has user experience, which is good looking, and has faster load times. But at the end of the day, business wants a product which gives them the productivity, is high on ROI, and has the security features. So what we did was we actually looked at that sweet spot and we said, hey, what product can fit in? And we came up with this product called ThinkBook, which we just launched 3 months back along with Intel, aimed at SMBs. And just this month, we launched another iteration of that called the ThinkBook Plus, which won 9 awards in CES show.
Okay.
And it has a front screen on the A cover or on the top cover where you can scribble notes, etc. So
I'm sure the millennials will love that.
Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I want to get my hands on it. It would be pretty good to work on it. The second is, how do you look at the present infrastructure which you have without investing more, and how do you get more out of it?
That's an important point. Present infrastructure without investing too much more. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what we do there is look at some of the accessories which are available in the market, right? You can upgrade your system by attaching a monitor to it, and people who use monitor with a laptop, they actually say they're more productive than employees.
I was going to say, I think it's easier to focus.
Absolutely.
Kind of cuts off everything in the periphery vision.
Right, and look at the fact, right? You keep on looking at your smaller screens, and when you look at your phone for an extended period of time, your eyes get tired. But when you do the same thing on a larger screen, it's much more easier.
And it's better for the rest of the 65% of the employee population.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the third part is, as I've been saying, that we don't want SMBs to focus on what are non-core issues for them. So we provide this whole host of deployment services, where we look at deployment of the device, the life cycle of the device, the support which is needed to the time the device needs to be disposed of. And we also look at the fact that today the work culture has changed. It's no longer 9 to 5, right? You want to be connected, you're working with various countries and various time zones, so you need extended business hour support. So we have something called Premier Support Services which we provide. So in Lenovo's portfolio, there are a whole host of things which we have been doing to get SMBs to work better and get on this technology path.
That sounds pretty exhaustive. But what really piqued my interest was, product as a service. That, for our SMBs, that really just makes sense. And of course, I'm curious to know more about the premium piece. But before that, coming back to small and medium business owners spending their precious money on technology, right? How can a small and medium business owner figure out the right technology strategy? How to invest, what to invest?
Sure.
How should we be thinking about this?
So let's give some structure to this, right? You want to think of your buying strategy for technology. Like I said earlier, start with the employees. And you probably have a couple of different sets of employees who tend to work in a different way, or who are supposed to work in different ways, right? Maybe somebody's a sales guy, maybe somebody's more behind the desk in the office, right? So think of these different kinds of employees that you engage and the kind of work that they're supposed to do, and figure out what are their needs, right? What are their work needs? You can document that. So that's a starting place. Another thing you should do is go and talk to them. Right? What are the problems that they are facing today? Right? You mentioned a couple of statistics earlier about how devices get replaced before they're supposed to because they're broken or they have other issues with these devices. So go and ask these employees, am I enabling you for the kind of work I'm asking you to do?
Right.
Right? And qualify that, quantify that, right? Measure the employee experience. So do all those things. Now, having done this, it'll give you enough insight that when you sit down and say, okay, when you're thinking of your buying strategy for technology, then you have these insights.
Right.
So don't just go with cost. Think about these things. Now, having done this, don't forget to make a strong business case because you want to be sure that you have to justify,
money,
right? Maybe you have partners, and you have to justify why you're making this expense. So come up with a good, foolproof business case, which means don't just think about the tangibles, which everybody does, right? You think about benefit, you think about cost, but go beyond. Think about the intangibles. For example, will buying certain kinds of devices, will it lead to higher employee satisfaction?
Right.
Will buying device X versus Y help my employee deliver better customer experience? Right? All of these things play a very important part. And think about the risks. Think about the flexibility that this device will offer to you in the future. Right? So don't think short term. I think a little long term. And that brings me to the last part, that when you're thinking short term versus long term, ensure that you have the right technology partner. Because this partner will help you, make those decisions, saying this is good for you for short term, but in the long term, because this is going to change, this is coming, you're going to lose out. So somebody who helps you, navigate those changes. So choose the right technology partner. And we began saying how the workplace is changing and the workforce is changing. So you want a partner that will help you navigate these waters, help you plan for the future, because everything is changing so quickly today. So get the right partner. That's very critical.
Yeah, and we've seen that. Actually, we've seen how that has actually played out. You talked about, Amit talked about the fact that you need to have the right technology partner. What I'd like to add is here you have to think of partners that are ahead on the innovation curve. And I'm not just saying this because I'm sitting here, but Lenovo and Ashish talked about it, the fact that they have a premier service, that they are thinking about device as a service, the fact that they are just ahead of the curve in thinking out how SMBs could benefit from the range of products and services is exactly the kind of partner you need to do. So just look at the market.
Context aware.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. I think I've run out of questions, but I'm going to quickly sum up before we take a minute's break and then go to the Q&A. One, it was really, really eye-opening to hear some of the facts, the things like the 300 tasks and distractions, things like that. 35% of the workforce is millennial, and that, almost about the same percentage leave every 6 months, right? And retaining the employees and how employee experience really influences the customer experience and therefore the correlation to the bottom line, right? So it's been a very, very eye-opening conversation on working smarter. So before we get into questions from the audience, a quick break. Here's a video for you. And welcome back. I have questions here on my mobile phone that the team is just feeding to me, questions that have come from you, our audience, for our panelists today, Ashish, Amit, and George. So let me start with the first one. Why is workplace technology crucial for employee experience?
You want
I
me to
think
take that?
yes, please, George. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I mean, if I remember correctly, $750 million are spent every year in different ways by different companies to increase employee engagement. But the amazing fact of this is when we look at the data, not much has changed in the way the employees are engaging actually. So a lot of this seems to be going waste, and therefore it begs the question as to why this is happening. Millions of dollars being spent, very little effect. The fact of the matter is that even though the companies are talking about digital transformation, when they look at the IT infrastructure within their own companies, it's not changing that much. And therefore, for all that we discussed earlier, that whole idea about employee experience translating into customer experience, translating into revenue and potential, that link seems to be broken. And it is for us to see, we are working and we see this happening across, especially in SMBs. When you look at the data, some surprising facts. It takes almost 8 minutes to boot into a PC if the PC is 3 years old or more. Now that means that employee is 8 minutes late into starting a conversation.
And it frankly doesn't work for most of your employees because in 8 minutes you can be doing a lot.
A lot, right? And so just multiply that by the employee hours lost.
Think about when we start meetings, all of us face this. Every time you start to kick off a conference call, you lose the 5 or 6 minutes. It's still connecting, and you're getting in touch with people. Hey, are you on? Are you off? What's the problem? Just imagine the time that you lose.
Absolutely. And so the other one is just getting connected to the internet, right? If your Wi-Fi is not up to the task, you're losing so much of time. And what do? You'll reach out to your phone. Yeah. But that's not the right device for you to be getting the most out of the internet. So there are these problems. Just passwords. Every 90 days, you have the necessity to go and change the password.
I hate that. I completely hate it because I've run out of ideas. New passwords. I've run out of ideas.
And so, special character.
So and that can be automated. So if you automate that, that's again time that you gain back. There is data to say that 45% of the millennials that we talked about, which is 35% of the work group today, they are deciding which company to join based on the IT infrastructure and the benefits from IT that they get. Now that's a huge number. Microsoft has done a study that shows that if you just reduce the load times and increase battery life, you increase the feeling that the IT is taking care of an employee by as much as 121%. Can you just imagine that, right? So just by giving the right device, the right kind of tools, you can increase your employee engagement by a factor.
And you think about the workforce today, millennials have these amazing devices at home and they're used to all these fancy things.
Yes.
But imagine when they step into the workplace and you give them stuff that is slow, the internet is bad, they're going to leave you in 3 months, right? Wasn't that what you said? 3 months, 6 months?
6 months.
6 months, yeah. They're going to walk away because who wants to work in a place like that?
And you don't want that happening.
I think the generational context is very important, right? Because the millennials, as we keep on speaking, have been brought up in a very different environment than from the previous generation and the generation after that, right? Some of us are okay with the fact that you have to stand in queue for a bank to make a bank deposit or to open an account in 2-3 days.
There are some of us who've never even stood in a queue ever because we're used to just doing everything digitally.
Absolutely. And I can tell you from my experience, when I speak to my younger cousins and all that stuff, they make a decision on which bank account they want to open on the fact that whether the account will open in 15 minutes or 30 minutes. So that's kind of technology difference which it makes, right?
Yeah. Does that include going to the bank or not?
Not going to the bank
at all. Just online.
And once I was just talking to one of them and he's like, oh, I've been waiting for a minute and my OTP has not come in. This is so frustrating.
Yeah.
When you put 8 minutes in context of 1 minute OTP not coming, it
Absolutely.
tells you that what kind of generation we have today and how much they value technology and how much onus they face on something like a faster load times.
So this next question that's just come to me is actually relevant to what you're saying. So the question is this: what are some of the key challenges that device buyers or employers face, basis your experience? And
So I think when we have spoken to the SMB employers, there are two challenges which they face, and they are not actually very surprising, which is there. One is from a fact of that all of them want their employees to be more productive, right? Now they are not able to figure out that how do they increase the productivity. And as in all this conversation, we have established that technology is one of the pillars which can help do that. The second is on the budgeting piece of that. 45% of the people whom we spoke to, while recognizing the fact that they want to improve the productivity, they said, but we don't have the budgets to do that. So how do we improve the employee productivity while keeping the budgets in the same thing? So there are obviously solutions which are available. We spoke something about augmenting the present infrastructure by attaching something like a monitor, which improves the productivity. Or you can, in fact, look at the fact that how you upgrade your systems to include maybe more amount of RAM or latest hardware and stuff like that. And then there is the other option where you can be innovative on how you deploy technology, which is what we spoke about on device as a service, right? Where we give the option to the SMBs to pay on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, which is there instead of paying once and for all. So all of these things are something which can help do that. And that's why, again, to the point which Amit was also making, that what SMBs need to recognize is technology is not something which they have been focusing on core on, so they might not know the entire thing, and it's always good to get some outside perspective, some outside help in doing all these stuffs. I'll give you a very simple example, right? Education. Just look at 4 years back. There was this entire thing of bags, right? The school bags are getting heavier and children are carrying too much load. People have this prime time debates on 10 kgs bag and 15 kgs bag. Now, why suddenly those debates are not there? Because most of them are getting replaced by digital equipments. Most of them are getting replaced by a laptop, by a tablet.
Really good example.
Absolutely. And that's how, if technology can solve a problem for a child, why can't technology solve a problem for SMBs to be more productive?
Very nice. And I've got one more question here. Why is employee engagement a business problem for SMBs?
So, it is certainly a business problem, right? Think about the SMB, classic SMB. You said, what is the SMB worried about? It's growth at all costs, like growth all the time. Somewhere at the back of the mind is something about employee experience, all of those things. But the other, classic SMB issue is that they want to do more with less, right? And they have limited resources, they have limited employees. So typically we see this in SMBs, like the same employees multitasking, is doing different kinds of roles.
Your roles are not so monodimensional.
Right. You have to be able to do different things to be successful at the SMB, and that's what SMB owners also want. That we want these kind of employees. Great. How do you get these kind of employees? How do you ensure that they do more than they're supposed to do? Any guess? Employee experience, right? If they are having a great experience, I mean, think about it, right? If they have a great experience, right? They have, and research shows this, that they are more connected to the firm. They will go above and beyond what they are supposed to do. They will proactively look for problems and go out and solve those problems, all on the basis of the fact that they are having a a good experience at work, they're happy at work, they're satisfied. So this is a business problem that if you want to chase growth, if you want employees to do more for you, make sure that you are giving them a better experience. That's where that growth is going to come from, right?
Got
So
it.
it's completely a business problem.
Yeah, and I think just to add to Amit's point, right, there is also another aspect from the employee perspective. Even if employees want to be more productive, if they are not aided by technology, how can they be more productive?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? Again, a simple example, somebody wants to work, you ask them to specially work on, let's say, a weekend. I'm pretty sure the employee will say, I'm okay to work for an hour, but in a city like Mumbai or Jakarta, I'll not travel for 2 hours in traffic to go to
Yeah.
office to get that
Bangalore.
work done.
Bangalore.
Yeah,
And
Bangalore.
there too, again, technology plays a very important role, you know.
Right, and so
Being
employee
portable and-
engagement is a business problem. Without employees being engaged and without employees working for your business, how can you expect the business to
You know,
grow?
at Forrester, we talk about this concept of balancing demands and resources. Right? When you are going to an employee and saying, hey, can you help me with this? You're making a demand of that employee. But on the other hand, are you giving that employee the tools to be able to do that easily? So have to balance these demands and resources.
Between what is expected of you and what is being given to you.
How do you enable your employees to do all
Goes
this?
back to kind of the gap, the perception gap
Yeah,
we were talking
yeah,
about
absolutely.
earlier. I have one more question. How do you see the role of cloud-based tools evolving, especially for SMBs in the Asian market? I think you were talking about cloud earlier, George.
it's a very good question, and all of us touched upon what the answer is.
Yeah,
You
portability,
talked about
connectivity.
you talked about the fact that the SMB has business growth as the biggest issue.
Yes.
Ashish talked about costs, and you talked about costs, right? And so the first thing is we have this term called the democratization of technology that has come in because of the cloud. In the past, you had to go buy all the servers, had to put it up in order for you to have the employees access that. You don't need to do that today. So it's way more easier. You don't have to go into big capital investments in order for your employees to get onto technology because of the cloud. That's number one. We've also seen that if your business is up in the, is accessing the cloud and is cloud ready, then you solve a major problem for SMBs, which is cash flow. A 308% increase, supposedly, if you take all your applications onto the cloud. Now, you're right that I mentioned, if you remember the statistic I gave was only 25% are actually utilizing the cloud today.
Yes,
but
which is surprising.
It's really surprising, but here's where I think we have some hope. And the hope is because statistics again show that 3/4 of SMBs today are looking at ways to bring their applications onto the cloud. So there is this, while we are at the start of this movement, SMBs are quickly realizing and are now moving full speed ahead to get onto the cloud. So absolutely important aspect of how we look at costs and how we look at cash flows.
And therefore, also it connects back to needing high performance or better performing devices, because they need to connect faster. They need to be able to do like a dozen different things
Absolutely.
online at the same time.
Absolutely, and good that you brought that point because, right, you start looking this startup fever which is there and look at what has happened in last 2-3 years. So many unicorns, so many organizations which are like billions of dollars. 2-3 years back, these were SMBs, right? And they have now grown to
Very nice perspective.
and all of them have used technology, right, to get the and mostly cloud-based technologies.
Cloud first, as they're called.
Yeah, cloud first, as they call. What has helped them, right? The advent of 4G has helped them. Cloud has helped them. Payment gateways is something which has helped them. So if SMBs open their eyes to technology, I think they can look at more business opportunities as well, along with the employee engagement perspective.
And better productivity.
And better productivity. And nowadays you have to realize that the customer wants to reach you 24 by 7, right?
Yes, yeah.
And so example in Lenovo, right, we have started the service called WhatsApp service, where you can log a complaint on WhatsApp instead of, because people now don't even want to spend time
Yes.
on
Talking to anyone, yeah.
phones because they
Just
don't
want
want to
WhatsApp.
speak to somebody whom they don't know. They just want to WhatsApp and say, hey,
I
here is
got a
my
problem.
problem, and
Yeah, I got a
Yeah.
problem.
and they expect you to get back to them. So.
Okay, so I have several more questions that have come in, but I think in the interest of time, we could maybe take a couple more. This next one is, what is the future of work and how will workplaces evolve? I believe, Amit, this might be your favorite topic.
Everybody loves talking about the future, right? Everybody wants to know what lies ahead. If you remember that app that came out last year, you could change your facial features.
Right.
What was the top thing that people were doing? They were trying to figure out what will I look like when I'm old. Right? Everybody wants to know the future. So
I think that is a
this
bit depressing,
question
but
is
okay, there are better ways of looking.
everybody
the
wants to know
future.
the future. Yes. So what does the future of work look like? I think it's very closely tied to the fact that technology is moving at such a fast pace today.
Yeah.
So that's going to impact, how we work in a big way. So you have, very interesting things like AR, VR, IoT, all of these things that are coming at us. The big one is automation. And we like to think of, technology as a double-edged sword. So on the one hand, you have something like automation coming, and it's going to help as an SMB. It can help you make your workplace and the work that your employees are doing. It can help you become more efficient, more safe, more convenient, and all of those things are going to happen. So that certainly lies ahead in the future very soon. The other aspect of this is that because you're going to automate so much, that also means that perhaps some jobs are going to go away. Or perhaps the way you do certain jobs are going to change.
Yeah, some things are going to become faster.
Yeah, some things, you maybe don't need a human for anymore. So I think it's very important for SMBs that when they think about the future of work, remember that it's a double-edged sword, and it's very important for you to help reskill the people that you have. Because there's a survey out there which shows that people are very, very wary of something like automation, and they're worried about losing jobs. So as an SMB owner, it's up to you that when you're using technology, bringing in new stuff for the future, make sure that your employees are well aware how it's going to happen. So the buzzword there that we like to talk about is reskilling. So if you think about the future of work, think about reskilling, right? There's the technology aspect, yes, but it's also about reskilling your employees so that you all move together ahead in the future.
So when Amit is speaking about it, right, and we at Lenovo actually look at it in terms of what can be the future. So there is artificial intelligence, which has been a buzzword for some time now. There is IoT, Internet of Things, and there is AR, VR. So all of these, when you put to somebody, right, they're like, oh, what is this? This is something which we don't know. But we have to also remember that as we go into maybe early 90s, right, how many of us had heard about internet? And see today where we are.
Yeah.
Can't live without it.
You can't live without. So all of these technologies are something which is going to happen. So it's about the fact that how fast you adopt them, and how fast you work with them, and how fast you utilize them to grow your business. And Lenovo and Intel have been working on this for quite some time to do our bit on all of these and how we bring them to the organizations to try and scale up faster.
I wish, I thought of this and asked this question earlier because it's such an interesting question. Again, it comes back to, when you're sort of in survival or growth mode and you're very cash flow focused or profitability focused, sometimes you don't think beyond the next 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
Okay, fact is today, 5 years is already you can see a huge transformation in the amount of technology we're going to use.
That's
right?
a whole generation.
Absolutely. Because 10 years ago, I don't think we used as much email.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think we ran everything on the cloud.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
I don't think we were so connected. I don't think we worked on the go so much, right?
Right.
So you can already see that major transformation. And you mentioned this earlier. So now, if are we thinking enough about what's coming up 4 or 5 years from now as, SMB owners? Second, what's going to come 10 years from now? And therefore, how is the workforce ready? I think it's a very, very, and again, it kind of comes back to the whole conversation around employee experience,
Right.
you know, sort of tuning the organization, preparing it for the future. It's not so much about today anymore. And because tomorrow, like in 24 hours, technology is going to change, right?
Yes.
So I wish I thought of this earlier. So last question for this live cast. I think this is for you, Ashish. Why did you create ThinkBook? Isn't ThinkPad a good enough PC for business users?
So again, ThinkBook is something which is aimed at today's generation, and ThinkPad undoubtedly remains as the best business notebook which is available. But it's something which was also built a couple of years back, looking at what was the need of the organization at that time. And what is happening today is that certainly there is a point where the business needs and the needs of an employee or the individual user are differing from each other. A user wants, an employee wants something which is portable, which is something which we spoke about in the problems being faced by the organization when we look at technology. A user wants faster boot times. A user wants a good-looking machine which he can take home, use at home, show to the employees. A user wants to carry one single device. He or she doesn't want to differentiate between what he is using at work and what he or she is using at home.
Yeah.
Right? So what you want is a good screen so that you can watch movies on that. You want good sound. And what we saw was that it was making, under this or bring your own device movement, SMBs move away from business notebooks and look at more consumer devices, which is not bad. But when you look at the fact that what happens with those consumer devices, right? They're built with something a task in mind. So they don't have the right kind of support services which are available. They'll not last you for beyond 3 years, which is there. They don't have the security features. They'll not get your Office softwares loaded because it will not be certified to work on them. And that will cause more downtime. So what it impacts is, at the end of the day, productivity. So we were trying to look at this thing and say, hey, it can't be rocket science, right? That you can come up with a device which can be good looking, which can be portable, which can be light, which can have long battery life, which can have a Dolby sound on it, which can have a Skype certified microphone, which can have a full HD. So when you think of it, it's actually not something which nobody can think of, right? But it's about taking all those user feedbacks, putting in a machine, and trying to get it right. So that's where ThinkBook comes in.
Yeah, so you were listening to the employees. You were sort of transforming with the times, moving with where technology is going and how much more users are interacting and using technology.
Absolutely. And then if you just take this one step forward, right? Within ThinkBook, there are various variants also which we have launched. So there is a 13-inch screen size for people who may be using their laptops for a long time, right? But they want something which is light so that they can carry around with them. There is a 14-inch which is available so that people can work on for long hours. There are 15-inch mostly being used by people in accounting or finance because they want a numeric keypad and a bigger screen to look at numbers, etc. So basically, it just adapts to what user wants or what kind of experience it wants without compromising on the fact that SMB should have. And at the end of the day, it's also about ROI that you want. We've been speaking about things fitting without costing too much, and ThinkBook does that perfectly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashish, and thank you, Amit. Thank you, George.
Thank
That's
you.
all we have time
Thank
for.
you.
I think it was a very, very enriching conversation, and I learned a lot. And I think every single SMB business owner who would have joined us would have learned a lot too. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so
you.
much. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation on working smarter, and we'll see you again on the next livecast. Thank you.